In this video, we're going to focus on admin level functions performed within the setup cog at the top right corner. From this screen is where you'll do all the setup for various elements in your site. Let's start with supervisors. This brings you to the screen with all the supervisors currently defined in your site. If you wanted to modify or delete any of them, you would do so with the action button over on the left. Let's add a new one. This is your supervisor setup screen. From here we can go ahead and type in whatever username we want the new manager to log in with, and whatever their name is. Once that's set, the next thing you'll do is determine whether you want to give them manager or admin access. The main difference is admins have the ability to do all the setup that we're looking at in this video. Managers mostly just deal with their employees' records. For this example, let's stick with the manager. Most of this can be left alone unless you have any special circumstances in your site, which is generally discussed during implementation. The password's going to be defaulted, so we can leave that alone. So we'll go ahead and set up whatever email address the supervisor has, as well as a phone number to contact them at. And then we'll click OK to complete the setup. It'll give you a summary screen, and you'll click back to list to see your new supervisor. If you had decided to set the supervisor up with admin access, setup would now be complete. Because we chose a group manager, there's one last piece we have to do, so we'll modify that profile. And you'll see a couple new buttons that weren't there before. At minimum, you have to assign at least one department to a manager's profile in order for them to be able to log in. So we'll go ahead and use Department 1. You could also assign groups of employees based on any default location if you have that enabled, or you can set individual employees as well, just in case this manager oversees employees that may not be in their department. We'll go ahead and click OK to save that. There's the summary again. And we can see that incomplete tag is now gone. At this point, the supervisor has an email in their inbox waiting for them with their username and password, and they can start logging in and doing what they need to do. Next, we'll look at setting up and processing holidays. Once again, we'll open the cog, and we'll click on this holidays link. This will bring you to the list of all the holidays currently defined in your site. To add a new one, we'll go ahead and click this add button up here. Select whatever date the holiday is going to be on. We'll go ahead and just choose one as an example. This is whatever holiday name you want to assign it. So we'll give this, call it the video holiday. The pay code is whatever code your payroll company needs to receive to tell that this is a holiday. This can vary depending on what payroll company you're with. I'll just stick that one in as an example. If you're not sure, refer to your payroll rep, they'll be able to let you know. Again, most of this can be left as default. If you did want to limit this to specific departments, you can do so here. And if you just wanted, say, 2 departments to get it, you do so like that. The percentage credit is how much credit of a default day you want your employees to receive for this holiday. So the default is typically 8, but it can be changed. So if you wanted to give, say, 6 hours to everybody, you'd do 75% here. If you wanted to give 8 hours, you would do 100%, and so forth. We'll go ahead and save that. And we'll see that our new video holiday is now saved here. You'll notice within the setup of this, if you go back and modify, there's a process checkbox here. This is not how you process holidays. This is for display only to help with troubleshooting in case you do run into an issue. To process your holidays, we'll go back to this cog, and instead of the holidays link, which is for setting up, we're going to select process holiday here. Once again, you'll see a list of holidays, but instead of the option to modify them, this is where you will process them. So we'll scroll down to our holiday we just set up, and we'll click that process button. There's a message indicating it was successful. At this point, you can go check your employees' records to be sure, and you're in the clear. Next, let's take a look at setting up locations. From the Setup dropdown, we'll click Locations, and you'll see the list of what's currently defined in your site. Like everywhere else, if you want to modify or delete, you can do so from over here. Let's go ahead and add a new one. This will be our video studio. Any comments is really just a description, and these other fields here are optional depending on any special circumstances you may have within your site. We can now see our new location set up and ready to use. Next, let's take a look at setting up jobs. There's a couple different ways to do this. The most typical one is through costing, so I'll go ahead and select that. And just like locations, you'll have a list of jobs here based on what's already set up in your site. We'll click that familiar Add button at the top and fill out the fields as needed. Client and task are typically required. This is generally a parent-child relationship, but however your company needs it to work is totally fine. Code and description are entirely optional. This is what the employee sees. The start and end date are typically only required for temporary jobs that you don't want anybody to be able to select after a certain point. But for the most part, or if you're not sure, you can go ahead and set that to however far back you need. And our end date, we don't want this to expire anytime soon, so I'm going to go ahead and set it to the year 2050. The rest of this can typically be left as default unless you have any special circumstances. We'll go ahead and add that job. We can see our new job is now defined here and ready for use. Next, let's take a look at setting up alternate payments like bonuses or any special pay. Select expenses, and once again, here's a list of what's already defined in your site. Let's go ahead and add a new one. This is the description for your payment type, so we'll just make that one a regular bonus. Once again, the pay code is going to be determined by your payroll company, however they need to receive it, so refer to your payroll rep. The from date and to date, very similar to setting up jobs. This is within what date range is this alternate payment type eligible to be used. We'll go ahead and stick with our default entries so that there's no problem with restrictions. We'll determine whether this need to be entered as a dollar value or if it's per hour worked. If you have fixed hourly rates or a percentage of the employee's base rate, you would set that here for hours. Otherwise, with dollars, you would leave those alone. Status is active because you do want to be able to use these alternate payments. And limit to determines what level of access is required in order to put this payment in. Typically, this is at the manager level, but it's up to your company to decide how you want to restrict it. We'll leave these last two items alone and click Add. And we can see our new bonus is set up and ready to use. Let's take a look at setting up time off types. From the time accrual screen, we'll select Manage Time Off Request Types because that's what we want to add to. And here's the list of what's defined in the site. From our setup screen here, let's go ahead and set up whatever we need. We'll call this personal. Short order can be left alone. The pay code, once again, this will come from your payroll company. The accrual type is if you need to track balances for this time off type. If your company doesn't require that for these time off types, you could leave it alone, but if you do, you would put something in here. This doesn't really matter. If you don't care, you can go ahead and just make it match whatever your pay code is. Otherwise, you can name it what you want. The rest of this can typically be left alone unless you have any special circumstances. We'll go ahead and click OK to add that. Here's our summary. And we can see that our new personal time off type is now in. If you did decide to add an accrual type to this to where you're tracking balances, what you'll want to do next is let's go back to the time off menu, and we want to be sure to add buckets for everybody so that they can start using those balances and you can start modifying them as needed. That's done with this button here. What this does is create new buckets for those who don't have them, but it will not affect any already existing buckets. So if you're not sure, go ahead and click it. Next, let's take a look at how to set up and modify our pay periods. If we wanted to add individual periods a week at a time, we would do so with the add button here. Otherwise, if you want to add an entirely new pay group, you could go with batch create up here. If you already have your pay period set up, most likely all you'll need to do is batch extend, unless you have any special circumstances which you'll be aware of. From here, we'll select our group. We only have one, and we'll click continue. And it'll allow us to select how long do we want to extend this out. If you know your periods aren't going to be changing anytime soon, go ahead and pick the longest one and continue. We can see that this has been extended by several years and we don't have to worry about it for a long time. Last thing worth looking at up here is you can set your landing page for when you log in. Which tab do you want to be on? This is helpful if you spend most of your time doing one certain function, such as managing employees' time. You could set that, and the next time you log in, you'll go straight to that page. That's it for this video. If you still need additional help or have any questions, feel free to reach out to support and we'll get you some help.